Like, comment, and subscribe to J New Orleans.
There is something deeply strange about society, especially when people gather into groups. The strangest part is this: group often become the exact thing they claim to stand against. People will say they hate bullying, then form mobs. People say they want justice, then become cruel. People say they care about rights, then mark other people from using theirs. People say they want the truth, then only accept it when it flatters their side. And once you notice it, you can't unsee it. And typically, a lot of people notice it, they just don't notice it when they're doing it. You start realizing that a lot of modern social behavior is not about morality, it's about tribal comfort. It is about emotional safety inside a group. It is about the relief of feeling protected, correct, and socially approved. For many people, that feeling matters more than truth, fairness, consistency, or even humanity. That is why people will condemn harm in one context while participating in it in another. That is why people will quote amendments for themselves and ignore the rights of others. That is why people will scream about oppression while humiliating anyone who disagrees with them. That is why people can speak all day about ethics, but become vicious the moment their group identity feels threatened. That is not just hypocrisy, it's psychology. And if people don't understand it, they will keep living inside it without realizing how much of themselves they've handed over to the crowd. And we're going to get with the section. The group becomes the monster it claims to hate. And it's common in groups of really any category, like the typical ones, the work environment, the neighborhood, the family, friend groups, social media groups. Like people, when they get together and they have enough in common, they start to think with one brain to the point where if something is too different from the regular thought process, it sends everyone into a panic. And that's why it's so easy for friend groups and work groups to point the blame at one or two people when the dysfunction is really everyone. And then they use those people as a scapegoat, and then the cycle just keep completing, repeating. They have people come in like new employees, or they find new people on the internet, or different family members, and they just keep repeating the cycle over and over again. And it's like the people who are part of it is almost like walking onto the set of a Hollywood stage where a person is actually in the middle of a play, and you as a interrupt, like you're an interruption to the play. The way they act in real life is the same as that, to where it's like they're repeating the same play. It's a rerun play that they do over and over again. And when you tell them, hey, this always happens when you go here, or you usually do this in these types of environments, like when you try to get them to see the connection to possibly resolve whatever it is, it's like the people short circuit or they self-destruct. Either they become defensive towards you, or they'll try to pacify the situation. Or some people, when they short circuit, they'll start speaking as if y'all didn't just have this conversation. A lot of people think inconsistency comes from stupidity. Sometimes it does, but often it comes from something deeper. Most people do not build their beliefs from first principles. They build them from belonging. Belonging is one of the strongest needs a human being has. To be accepted by the group once meant survival. And y'all hear this all of the time. And I hear it all of the time because I definitely do like philosophy, psychology, and things like that. But it's because it's one of those things that's proven. Like you can't disprove it almost. If you really look at the behavior of people or even your own behavior, it reigns true. Majority of the things people do is for acceptance. Anyone who has a luxury affinity, that's for acceptance. It may not be a direct thought when you do it, but somewhere deep down in your subconscious is for acceptance, because unless it's for yourself and no one else knows you have it, when you do things in the sight of other people, it's for acceptance. How is my house looking when I'm having a guest? How is my car looking when I'm having people over? Versus if you someone who just clean or someone who do stuff on your own, you don't even care what people think about it. You care about what you feel. If you feel your house is dirty, you're going to clean it up. If you feel your car is messed up, you're going to clean it up. And you're not caring if other people going to make a comment on it or not. And to be rejected often meant isolation, vulnerability, and danger. Our nervous system still carries some of that ancient wiring. So even in modern life, when being cast out does not mean literal death, it can still feel emotionally devastating. That is why people will abandon logic to stay aligned with a crowd. That is why they will soften their standards for their own side and harden them for others. That is why they call something abuse when it happens to them, but accountability when they do it to someone else. Also, too, when people always screaming karma, 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 karma for other people, what does it mean when their life is falling apart, or if things are constantly happening to them? Because in my personal experience, I've never seen one of the karma kings or queens who always point at other people's misfortunes as karma. I've never seen them give themselves that same energy, or even reflect on growth or being a better person or acknowledging stuff that they may have done in the past. The people I see that display those behaviors typically romanticize anything or justify anything that they do to other people. And then when it comes to negative things happening in their own life, they try to make it some type of systematic oppression, or someone is out to get them, or people jealous of them, when in actuality majority of their problems are self-caused. Like step one of the problem was them starting the issue. It wasn't someone else throwing a wrench in the gas tank, or putting water in the transmission fluid or something. So the group gives people emotional permission to be inconsistent, and the group does something even more dangerous. If it allows individuals to feel righteous while behaving destructively. When a person acts alone, they are more likely to feel shame, doubt, or hesitation. But when the group approves, those internal alarms get quieter. The crowd becomes anesthesia. That is how normal people can say cruel things online. That is how decent people laugh at public humiliation. That is how people justify ruining reputations over accusations alone. It's also how vindication gets no attention while scandal spreads like wildfire, because the group never just gives approval, it gives absolution. And that's really something that people should think about whenever they get online defending themselves for anything, is that literally the initial story of negativity is always going to reign supreme over whatever comes after that, because it's really the way things work, and depending on the case by case basis what is working for that particular scenario in question. But also too, it's pointless, because majority of the people online do not know you in real life, and whatever they're judging you off of is not enough context for you to defend, because majority of the time the people come back with rebuttals to whatever you're saying, and it only makes the person defending themselves feel more attacked. Forbid if they have any type of mental issues going on in their personal life, it makes it worse. And it's really insane that a lot of people agree that they depressed, and studies over the past decade plus shows the internet, too much of it only worsens people's mental conditions, but yet people just log on every day like it's at work, like they get paid for it. Okay, and one of the most overlooked social patterns is how intelligence, sincerity, discipline, and morality are treated as threats. In many environments, the person taking life seriously makes everyone else uncomfortable. Why? Because a person trying to be thoughtful, stable, educated, or morally consistent creates contrast. Their existence forces other people to confront what they are avoiding. If someone is trying to improve, that silently exposes everyone committed to stagnation. If someone is disciplined, it highlights another person's chaos. If someone speaks carefully, it can expose how sloppy others are with their words and thinking. People do not always hate goodness because goodness harmed them. Sometimes they hate goodness because goodness reminds them of what they are not doing. That is why change is often mocked before it is respected. A person stops reckless behavior and becomes peaceful. Suddenly they are called boring. A person becomes more private, more disciplined, more thoughtful. Suddenly they are acting weird. A person becomes less reactive and less available for dysfunction. Suddenly they are accused of thinking they are better than everyone else. In reality, many communities unconsciously punish growth because growth threatens the emotional agreements holding the group together. Every unhealthy group has unspoken rules. Do not change too much. Do not become too disciplined. Do not become too aware. Do not make us look at ourselves. And if you break those rules, the group often responds with ridicule. And that is why, for me, majority, pretty much my whole life, all my life, I had to fight. But no, majority of my life, I've always been a person who is group adjacent. Like, I probably was connected to many groups, was known by many groups, cool with a lot of people, but I've never been able to fully submerge myself in group behavior because for me, my brain works for me. I've never, maybe it's, a lot of things start in childhood, could be a childhood thing, but I just never saw the use of that. And a lot of the times when people get in groups, they get really stupid. Like, it's like the fact that it's multiple brains, you would think it's supposed to make people more insightful, but it's like it really feels like a group project in fifth grade or something, no matter the age group that you're dealing with. And not to mention the whole group thing, people have to understand that it's optional to be in a group. As far as the groups that describe who we are as humans, racial groups, religious groups, and all of that stuff like that, that's optional too. Just because you have a trait, whether it's your color, it's your preference, it's your religion, you do not have to be stuck with those people. Like, when it comes to the quality of our life, the people around us that we, first of all, we the middle, we the core of the quality of our life. But everything, every layer on top of that, kind of like Earth's core, is a different section of our life that adds to the core. So, in addition to the core, who we are around in life really can change what happens. Like, the internet's here now. YouTube has been here for a while. Everyone likes crime stuff. There's a lot of dash cam and body cam footage online. There are too many examples of people having their whole life taken from them by association. If it's not being in the vehicle and dying during something reckless, it's usually being considered an accessory to a crime. Like, all of these different people that y'all call yourself hanging around for the sake of, for the sake of time, for the sake of relations, for the sake of connection, some of these people you already know that they not headed down the good road. And it's like people take all of the spiritual stuff and make it delusion as far as the manifestation and all of that when it comes to another person. If another person is showing you a consistent behavior with no signs of changing, there is no amount of hope in the bottom of the cookie jar that can make that person change. That is their own decision. So when it comes to people being connected to these people and trying to use sympathy and all of these other things as reasons why, when they snatch your livelihood away from you in whatever way they do it, you're gonna have to be the one to pick it back up. And what ends up happening is these people who allow people in their life to destroy their life, they find other people who victims just like them, and then they tend to stay in that victim frequency to where it's like a radio. No matter what radio you turn on, if you turn on 93.3 in New Orleans, that's a radio station. So what people do is they think because it's a different radio system they have that the frequency changes, but you have to change your own frequency. Not to mention, when it comes to groups, with groups, they can be very destructive. Like, you see it on the internet all of the time. And the thing that amazes me the most is when people are part of the music part of the groups, they only see what one fan base do, but they don't realize that all of them do that exact same thing. It's just different examples, it's different people reporting on it, it's different people monitoring it and seeing it. And not to mention, when it comes to people in groups, they don't have no personality when they're alone. Those are the people who they started off in groups and now they have social media addictions because in between them being in the company of people, they need some type of stimulation going on because they don't have hobbies because the group never gave them hobbies. They don't have any type of education because the group didn't want to get educated. They not in shape as far as just even healthy at all, not even on the weight loss stuff, because everything is not about weight and aesthetics. It's about vitamin levels. It's about your mobility. It's about whether or not you actually stretching your body, because the longer you don't stretch, your body becomes stiff. And that's where all of the knee pain and stuff come from, because your hips and your glutes usually hold a lot of the weight, but from you being stiff, it's going straight to your knees. That's why when you do squats, you squat with your legs open. And if people are stiff, you know, look how I just slipped into another topic, but that's okay. So now politics revealed this problem in one of its ugliest forms. Many people hold intense political opinions without understanding the actual duties of the positions they vote on. They do not know the scope of local government. They do not understand what city officials control versus what state or federal officials control. They do not know how our budgets work. They do not examine spending. They do not track infrastructure. They do not study patterns of corruption unless the scandal becomes impossible to ignore. And then, even then, people are biased with that as well. They try to make excuses for certain people, even with substantial evidence. And yet these same people will argue with absolute certainty. Why? Because for many, politics is not primarily civic engagement. It is social identity performance. Political belonging gives people a ready-made self. It tells them who is good, who is evil, who is intelligent, who is ignorant, safe, or who is dangerous. It removes the burden of independent thought. It transforms complicated social realities into emotional theater. You must pick a side, defend a side, attack the other side, repeat the slogans. That is why people can remain loyal to parties that repeatedly fail them. That is why visible symbols, party labels, and image can matter more than outcomes. That is why cities can suffer corruption, decaying infrastructure, failing systems, and neglected quality of life while people keep supporting the same types of leadership as long as the emotional branding stays intact. New Orleans is a good example of that, and Louisiana as a state. And I'm sure other people can name their state, but I was born here, so I'm not going to mention the state I wasn't born, for the simple fact people online are very defensive and they find any reason to argue you down to the ground, even though for me I don't read comments, so it's literally no argument. The ones I do read is always an accident when I get to the comment screen, because I actively avoid comments, for the simple fact that the internet is like going through a safari with a speakerphone on in the middle of the night and expecting doves to greet you. Like, the internet is the world unfiltered, to where people can literally get away with way more than get away with in real life. Even though the internet does leave a digital footprint, people still get very far with the crimes and things that they're doing and attempting to do online that they wouldn't be able to do in real life. Especially for you people who will not stop posting y'all children. But this is not about that. That'll be another video. That is why, for many people, political allegiance becomes religious in function. It provides certainty, community, enemies, language, and identity. And once politics becomes identity, facts start feeling like personal attacks. That is why people defend politicians the way they defend family. That is why criticism of a favorite leader feels like criticism of the self. That is why people would rather protect an identity than admit a mistake. The mind would rather preserve belonging than suffer the humiliation of realizing it was manipulated. Also, too, the reason all of these things are not going to stop, it can only change on a personal level. And maybe if that person inspires other people, it changes in that manner, is because of the fact that society, if you hit what throughout history, there's always been hierarchy in society. And a lot of these people who worship these people blindly, they don't realize that they're at the bottom of the barrel. And that is why they behave in that manner. When you look at servants and slaves and all of these different people throughout history, they have always been protective over their masters. But in today's society, we don't have the whips and the actual chains. We just it is in a different manner. And the way that these people build these connections is they prey on the weaknesses of people. That is why all of these people who have degreed psychologists and psychiatrists around them, giving them different ways for advertisement and media and things like that. They literally know the weaknesses that the public has. And it got stronger with social media because the public tells all of their business online. Now, granted, that's not the whole public, but what it looks like to them is the whole public, because even with surveys, you see, they'll survey 100 people and come up with a percentage based off 100 people and compare that to everyone else. So just imagine what they're doing with the information they see online. And all people do when you tell them this stuff is panic temporarily, talk about how, oh, they watching everything and they doing everything, and don't even realize y'all are the surveillance state. All of this recording, like everywhere, and even going live everywhere, like it's nothing for any of the organizations that's watching to look in the area and see all of the phones that's live or that's posting stuff to get the information they need to know. Like if you go back and look at all of the old spy movies, the way that people record everything now, they are like the cameras that used to be in the super high-tech spy movies. But a lot of people think these behaviors are new. They're not. Human beings have always been tribal. History is full of mobs, public punishments, moral panics, ideological hysteria, religious abuse, factional loyalty, scapegoating, social limitation, but the technology changed. The nervous system didn't. In older societies, the crowd gathered in town squares, churches, courts, saloons, dinner tables, local newspapers, and rumor networks. Today, the crowd gathers in timelines, comment section, private group chats, live stream, repost culture, and algorithmic outrage loops. Social media did not create mob behavior, it removed friction from it. Now people can join punishment instantly. Now they can feel morally involved without knowing any facts. Now they can perform righteousness in front of an audience. Now they can receive likes, validation, and social reinforcement for cruelty disguised as principle. The human brain is highly responsive to reward. Notifications, agreements, reposts, and public affirmation train behavior. So if someone gets rewarded every time they shame, mock, signal allegiance, or pile onto a target, that behavior becomes reinforced. Over that time, it can be part of their personality. This is why so many people online look addicted to conflict. The outrage is not just ideological, it is it is biochemical, and they are being rewarded with stimulation, certainty, and temporary belonging. And the tragedy is that consistent and constant engagement often makes people feel less connected, not more, because quality of interaction is not the same as quality of attachment. A person can spend all day connected and still feel emotionally starved. And that is why I really started to drift from social media as the time went on, because I noticed that people were becoming very lazy. Like for me, I've always been a person who likes genuine interactions. I guess maybe soul food inspired me because there's so many quotables from that movie that came out in the 90s. And just seeing the importance of regularly meeting up with people that matter to you, especially someone who has personally, I lost count at this point, but from childhood to now, over hundreds of people that I've grown to know and love have died, pretty much in many different ways, in all of the ways you know of, and maybe in some ways you don't know of. So for me, I've always appreciated people's time, and then all of the different songs that came out over the years about missing people who died, that made me appreciate people even more. But what I noticed was that around, I ain't gonna even say a year, but I noticed over the years, people who I knew pre-social media and knew to be a certain way pre-social media, I started seeing them pick up the ways of other people online. I've even seen people who I knew pre-social media and seemingly had a good connection with, but then it's like once they got online and started getting attention for being like, I don't even know what adjective to use in that sense, but they displayed a different person online and the people liked it. So eventually that became who they were online, but it made their real life more miserable because the happiness that they were portraying online was not translating into real life. So it kind of made them resent people who knew them in real life because you knew that the online stuff was capped, to where you see a lot of people do this, and then you kind of see them branch out to the other people on the internet, because the beauty of the internet is that you can meet pretty much anyone, good and bad, online. And when you have certain messed up ways or even unique traits, you can meet those people as well. So I find that Capilot University, people recruit each other for Capilot a lot on the internet because they all get the fact that they all pretending. But the downside to that is that when members of Capilot have feuds, then they expose everything about the fact that it's fake. And then the next section is religion exposes another painful truth about people. Many prefer the image of righteousness to the work of transformation. It is easier to quote than to embody. It is easier to sermonize than to self examine. It is easier to identify a person's flaws than to confront your own. That is why some of the loudest moral voices are often the least internally developed. They use a religion as a measuring stick for others and exception clause for themselves. They can identify sin in public, but rationalize it in private. They can detect flaws in strangers, but cannot turn their own failures into empathy. And that is not only about religion, it is a broader human habit. People love standards when the standards can be weaponized. They hate standards when the standards must be applied inward. That is why communities can become harsh, performative, and spiritually hollow. The language of virtue becomes a tool for special power rather than a path towards humility. And once that happens, people become easy to manipulate. If you can attach an agenda to a sacred symbol, many will follow without deep examination. Why? Because symbols bypass thought, they go straight to identity. If something sounds religious, patriotic, activist, intellectual, progressive, conservative, or culturally familiar, many people lower their defenses. They stop evaluating and start absorbing. They trust the label more than the content. That is how manipulation spreads through every group. Yes. And that is why no matter how enjoyable I am in person to people, which is genuine, it don't ever be pretended. The irony in it is that I don't put any effort into being impressive, and people still find me that, which is between them and whatever they believe in. However, when it comes to groups, I, again, especially when it comes to religion, politics, and all of that stuff, I don't like you people. Like, I have grown tired of all of you people because you don't live what you talk. And when it comes to politics, you people never even know the policies of the people y'all voting for. It literally is being ran like a presidential election in high school, where it's based off of popularity and if the person giving out candy, or if their slogan is the best, or if their parents having a pizza party to vote for them, or bribes to for them to win. It's not real. Not to mention, majority of the people who are politically aggressive, you don't even know how the structure of the government, your local government work. You don't know who's responsible for the street. Y'all don't know anything. Y'all are literally, and the reality is, this is not by accident. These people are literally puppets. They didn't give consent. That's why they deny when people call them puppets, but they're being puppets for these people, because what these good speakers do is they get people who need something, or if they don't need anything, they create a need for the people. So they create an issue, and then they come as the savior who's going to fix that issue. And not to mention, depending on what group of people they speaking to, they're going to use generic phrases like, "Oh, you've been going through so much, and people been making it hard for you," or whatever it is. They use that, and the people who hear it, they eat it up because they feel like, "Oh, the person was talking to me today, and oh, that person is powerful. Oh, he's a good speaker." When all they did was just yell and have asthma in the middle of them talking. But these people cannot be saved. And these people may be family members, they may be friends, but you have to understand. These people are now part of a group, and they're not coming up off that group. That's why you have families falling out over political views, which is that is so weird, because all a politician is a city employee that you vote for, a state employee or government employee that you vote for. So you mean to tell me that if you shopped at Walmart and your child shopped at a different store that's better, which is any, that y'all not gonna be cool because when you like that's the same equivalent, because what y'all have to realize, regardless of who's voting for who, the wrong that's being done in office is done by the person in office. It's not done by the people voting for them. And you never are going to get on the common ground insulting people's decisions in life. That's why politics is just so exhausting, because no matter who's in office, y'all lose. Y'all been losing for years. It's people who families been struggling since before civil rights and probably going to continue struggling. It has nothing to do with politics, but the fact that people are able to get sold the idea of politics or anything else, gambling, just something is like the little child in y'all is still on that merry-go-round by yourself, and you just looking around at anything that any group of people you could just immerse yourself in. So you go from the merry-go-round to eating sand in the sandbox with the sandhead kids, because that's the only way you feel seen. You don't know how to be alone, and there's many people like that. And when it comes to these types of people, do not engage with them, because they're emotional people. They're going to pull at your emotions. But if you are aware of what's going on, it's not worth the battle. Even insulting people, you could be someone that's a wordsmith that could read people to filth. It get old after a while, because most of these people are robots. They're not actual humans. Their whole life was programmed by somebody else. None of it was their decision. That's why you have people who joke about their husbands and wives, about how they hate them. People joke about hating their children. People happily whip their children for discipline, even though it's usually as a frustration reliever for themselves, because no lessons are taught. And not to mention, people whipping their children don't even be good examples themselves. Somebody should be whipping them for the bad money management, the bad dick management, the bad pussy management. So it's like when it comes to people in groups and toxic connections that bind them, just leave these people alone. And that's why with social media, I'm not a person telling everybody what they should do, but if you're going to use social media, be intentional. Make sure you benefit from it. If you on there for entertainment, you need to be laughing. Like, you don't need to be on there mad. Like, if you getting mad while you scrolling, you need to put the phone down. It's for your entertainment, or it's for education, or entertainment. Education is 3 E's: entertain, educate. I forgot what the other E is. E for everything, maybe EA Sports, but like, that's the number one thing. And number two, if the people live out of town and you really think y'all friends, talk off of social media and stop depending on social media to maintain a friendship. And also, too, with social media, stop posting vulnerable things. Like, that will never be normal. Like, regardless, even if I've done it in the past, which I don't have. I No, I actually haven't. But so it's like, anyways, next section. Why people praise downfall and grow numb to humanity. One of the darkest things happening in public culture is the normalization of celebrating the suffering of people we dislike. People laugh at ruin. People cheer for humiliation. People feel satisfaction at downfall. People can watch a person lose everything and respond with they deserved it, even with no physical harm was being done, even when the offense was words, old beliefs, social misalignment, or a failure to conform. Why does this happen? Because dehumanization is emotionally convenient. Once someone is labeled as the enemy, the brain stops seeing them as fully complex. Their pain becomes abstract. Their family becomes invisible. Their grief becomes irrelevant. Their humanity gets flattened into a symbol, and symbols are easier to hate than people. This is how societies grow cruel while still believing they are compassionate. The terrifying part is how normal this can begin to feel. Once people become used to seeing downfall as entertainment, their own empathy starts to erode. They begin treating tragedy as spectacle. They begin engaging with death, suffering, disgrace as if it were content. And when the culture loses its ability to pause and say, this is still a human being, it is already in moral decline. But what I like about those kinds of people, I will never call them out on it. I just stay the fuck away from them. Like, younger me used to be thinking that we were all in it to grow together and everyone around me, we're all going to grow. Now, I always knew that we were going to grow differently because people naturally are inclined to head down different paths in life. But when it comes to growth, that is not something that a lot of people mess with, especially because now you have more people who don't grow linking up with other people that don't grow. Anytime you go to a public place where it's a bunch of random people, grocery store, the gym, church, whatever, like minds always connect. The people at the gym who weird, they link up with the other weirdos so they can stare at people together. The people at church who like to gossip, they hang with the other gossip. So now they got the little teapot click going on. So people are always going to connect with the toxic nature in people. That is why when it comes to you as a person navigating life and you going in new environments, I don't know why they keep preaching people to be friendly. Like when you go places, be approachable, be social, but you should never be friendly at all because you don't know what you're walking into. You don't know who you're communicating with. A lot of these places y'all are seeing on the internet, they're being exposed for having all types of ulterior motives and being a part of all types of criminal organizations, especially when it comes to luring women and children. So, no, this is not a safe enough society for people to be telling everybody to be friendly. Now, by all means, I would rather a person just be silent than to say anything. So, like, if you feel like you about to say something that's negative or rude, just keep it. But I notice the people who are on social media daily, they have a higher tendency of blurting out things. Like all of the stuff that usually goes on here, which I don't know if everyone has that because the way some people live in, I don't think y'all have a brain up there. It got to be something else, a purse or a Jordan shoe or something. Or maybe the crayons from childhood might have got up there and expanded and turned into some type of mutation. But when it comes to wait, let me see. When it comes to new environments, it's like the best thing you can do is be observant, but also learn yourself more. Like I don't know why all of the advice about dating and money and everything else is to chase it. But what about you? Like you are the vessel that are seeking these items. Like, are you properly on the right path? Like, are you repaired from any previous damages from previous journeys? Like, these things matter because if you don't know how you operate to where you know how you operate, if you see a situation like if you looked at a concert online and saw it was packed, if you self-aware, you will know exactly how you would feel being in that crowd, whether you would be uncomfortable, whether you would be excited, enjoying it, or if you see restaurants and you see the way it's the cleanliness or lack thereof, you would know how that would make you feel if you had to be there. A lot of people don't. They assume what they would do based off of who they think they are versus realize, like, coming to realization of who they are, and that matters because people who don't know who they are have a higher likelihood of having misunderstandings that are from them. Like if you a person that yells, but you nobody ever told you that, and then you didn't realize you got two pennies stuck in both your ears, so you actually been hard of hearing, just stuff like that. And many people assume groupthink only happens to weak-minded people. That is too simple. Groupthink often traps people who are lonely, uncertain, underdeveloped, emotionally dependent, or afraid of rejection. It especially traps people who never formed a stable self outside of the crowd. If a person has spent years needing validation, conflict, noise, approval, and reaction, silence will feel like abandonment. Independent thought will feel scary. Peace will feel empty. Growth will feel socially expensive. This is why people often feel alone when they start separating from unhealthy group behavior. Not because they're doing something wrong, but because their nervous system has been conditioned to equate engagement with connection and approval with safety. If someone is used to constant group reinforcement, stepping away can feel like withdrawal. They may feel bored, they may feel invisible, they may question themselves, they may wonder if they're becoming dull, they may miss chaos even while knowing it was destroying them. This is prevalent for people who go to the club. Baby, when I tell you, meeting people at the club, it make you feel good. Like, oh, I'm able to be cool enough that people at the club like me, and I could do this, and this, and the people inviting me to VIP, and I'm getting in all of this stuff. But those people don't never stop going to the club. Some of those people die in the club, literally, and that's a few of the people who, when I said so many people I know died over my lifetime, some of them was at the club. They died. And the club didn't stop. Them clubs still went on the next week. Sometimes if it was a weekend, they went on the next night, like if nothing happened. And some of the people who were there when these people lives were taken still go to the club like it's nothing. Or even the times when I've seen glimpses of different places I used to frequent in Houston or New Orleans, and I'll see it via somebody else's page or on TV or something, and I see the same people still there because that's the only way they feel validated. They literally don't do anything else. It really wasn't until social media that people started traveling, and it's because of social media that people started traveling. Like the people who been travel or who been was going to travel, they did that naturally in their own time. But the people who saw it and had to repeat what they did, that's group thinking behavior. And let's see, one of the hardest truths about healing: people do not just grieve people, they grieve identities, they grieve roles, they grieve stimulation, they grieve the false closeness that came from dysfunction. A person leaving behind mob minded living is not only changing beliefs, they are changing emotional habits. And what recovery from this mindset really feels like. A lot of people romanticize change. Real change is usually less glamorous than people think. When someone starts healing from a life built around group approval, reaction, recklessness, outrage, or constant emotional noise, the first stage often does not feel empowering. It feels disorienting. And that's actually how people can relapse, because all of these different growths and changes that people may be inspired from due to online medias and stuff like that, it it, it doesn't feel good initially, but that's why feelings need to be taken out of priorities, because feelings really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. When you get to a point of growth where you're able to eliminate procrastination, you're able to limit waiting for motivation or waiting for tomorrow, or putting stuff off, you realize that the faster you act, the easier it is to do. Like, if I were to be sitting here right now and realize I left something outside, I have two options. I could just stop what I'm doing and go get it and then be back before I know it. Or I could sit up here and try to think through the easiest way. Oh, it's hot outside. Let me wait till the sun go down and let me do this, and this. And if I wait till the sun go down, what if it's pouring down raining? Or what if I have an emergency before the sun go down and I don't even have time? Those things, and that's something I've experienced in so many situations, from car mechanical issues of, oh, I'm gonna wait till this time, and then that time never came because either a hurricane was on the way, or a work emergency happened, or the shop ended up being closed because I didn't realize it was a holiday. Like, when it comes to growth and changing, it's like, the really honestly, like, the way American society is set up, is built for you to be comfortable being stagnant. Like, it literally, because if you lived a stagnant life, okay, you work the same job over and over again, you see all these layoffs, so you feeling like you made the best decision because your job don't fire people, but your job also pays the bare minimum, and you've been off and on having payday loans majority of your career, and then all of this buy now pay later, you still can indulge in all of these luxuries that you feel like is treating yourself, but you never really get past being financially comfortable. You always one paycheck away from failure, and but then you have everybody else living the same life, so y'all all are able to drink together because y'all all depressed for various reasons, but money is one of the ones y'all have in common. Not to mention, when it comes to other people around y'all, some people may feel better that they look better or dress better or doing better than people in the same situation as them. Maybe it might be people at the workplace or people at the club or people, just different places like that. So when it comes to growth, you're switching from that to being self-sufficient. You're now unlocking your adult power of your life. You are the adult. When things happen, you no longer look of who to call or, oh, I don't know what to do. You start thinking, your brain start actually coming up with solutions, because that's you stepping into the adult mantle. A lot of people have not picked up the mantle of adulthood yet, and they won't. And that is why, for people who date these kinds of people, and y'all keep looking in a pool of these kinds of people thinking that you find the right one and settle down and all of these things, maybe these people are built for destruction. So unless you want a long-term toxic relationship to be able to say you had 50 years, even though you had 25 black eyes in those 50 years, go right ahead. But when it comes to actual quality, until you realize who you are and what you need to improve to get to where you want to go. So a person used to high stimulation often cannot immediately enjoy calm. Calm can feel foreign, flat, or even threatening. This is why many people relapse into unhealthy environments, not because they truly want them, but because the familiar feels emotionally easier than the unknown. Real recovery often looks like this: you become more selective and lose access to certain groups. You speak less and notice how much of conversation used to be performance. For me, I don't be like, the other day my physical therapist told me that I'm quiet. I'm the most quiet patient he's ever had. Like, no, I don't. We don't have nothing to talk about. I don't talk just to talk. Like, I did enough of that when I was a kid. And then as I became older, it was more so about educational stuff, but nobody wants to hear that. They just want the benefit of it. They don't want to hear about financial literacy, but they want your financial literacy to fund the help every time they need it, or just the random financial donations that you give to people in your personal life who literally don't give a fuck about yours. They just, you really just a sugar person to them, not even like a sugar friend. You stop needing to react to everything and start realizing how much energy reaction was stealing from you. You begin building a life that is quieter but more honest. And at first, the honesty can feel like loss. Eventually, though, something changes. The quiet stops feeling like loneliness and starts feeling like relief. The sermon stops feeling like isolation and starts feeling like self-respect. Peace, peace stops feeling boring and starts feeling expensive, rare, and worth protecting. That is when a person begins developing a real self. It's also helpful to know that some people may actually be naturally introverted. And the reason that all of this stuff is painful to them is because they've been going against their real nature. But then you also have the fact that when we do stuff on a daily basis, we do it without thinking after a certain time. So if a part of you being social is you picking up your phone, calling a person every day, if a part of you not being social is you not calling that person no more, or maybe you tired of reaching out first all of the time, when you stop doing that, you feel a void at the in the moments that you would have done that. So when you're making these changes, you find comfortable replacements, are not always stopping immediately, lessening it. If it's an hour a day, switch it to 45 and then slowly bring it down. But just realize that depending on what you want out of life, this is you putting your down payment without money, like your spiritual and emotional down payment on you moving towards a better life. Because the better life is not something I can describe to you, because we're all different people. things that I consider a necessity is not going to be what other people consider a necessity. That's why you have to define it for yourself. Any video or book can give you a good idea, maybe some motivation, maybe some tips and tricks, or some frequently asked questions for things you may be experiencing, but you are the ultimate like author of the story of your life. Now, some people may have given that power up to other people unknowingly or knowingly, but you know, and how communities can fight this pattern. If a society wants to combat these behaviors, it has to do more than tell people to be kind or be positive. Those phrases are too shallow for a problem this deep. People need stronger internal structure. Communities need to reward truth over performance. They need to teach people how institutions can actually work. They need to normalize admitting error without social annihilation. They need to build cultures where changing your mind is seen as maturity, not betrayal. They need to stop treating emotional intensity as evidence of moral superiority. At the personal level, the work is even more demanding. A person has to learn to pause before joining the crowd. They have to ask, do I actually believe this? Or am I borrowing certainty? They have to ask, would I apply this same standard to my own side? Am I reacting from conscience or from social pressure? Do I know enough to speak with this level of conviction? And most importantly, would I still say this if no one were watching? Because a lot of people are not speaking from belief, they're speaking from audience awareness. Another part of recovery is building identity outside of group approval. That means developing convictions through study, reflection, and lived experience. It means learning how government works before pretending to interpret politics. It means reading source materials instead of just repeating personalities. It means caring about local systems, budgets, infrastructure, school boards, utilities, and public maintenance instead of only chasing national outrage. It means being willing to lose cheap belonging in exchange for deeper integrity. And also, a lot of these actions and questions, they won't take place if you're dealing with people who quick to be angry and who get triggered easily and who just emotional, which is so funny with men. They've made being angry masculine. Like, oh, women are so emotional. Women are way more emotional than men. But who's angry all of the time? Anger is an emotion. So therefore, people who are quick to anger, hence majority of people in prison who on in there for you know what is are men, and that's facts. That's not opinion. That's facts. So I mean, with information like that, humans are emotional people. I believe that anyone has the capacity to be emotional, and I also believe personally that anyone moving through life emotional is not in control of their life. They're a danger to themselves and whoever rely on their decision making skills. And it is entirely too many situations adding up daily because it's a million videos posted per minute on YouTube per minute or hour or something. So just imagine how many of those are emotional things that people are doing that they're gonna later regret, but it's never gonna be gone from the internet type stuff. So like I'm always going to speak about emotional things because that is the problem that we have in a lot of situations. These conversations that people have, which are more like celebrity deathmatch with words, is really just a bunch of emotions being thrown back and forth. Anger, hurt, disrespect, embarrassment, just things like that. And in closing, wait, did I double click again? What this behavior will lead to. If these patterns continue unchecked, society becomes emotionally loud and morally hollow. People will become more confident and less informed. Groups will become more united and less humane. Public discourse will become more performative and less truthful. Communities will become more ideological and less functional. People will know more slogans and fewer facts. Well, we they will have more opinions and less understanding. They will feel more connected digitally and more abandoned internally. Infrastructure will keep decaying while citizens argue about symbols. Corruption will keep surviving because spectacle distracts from systems. And people will keep destroying relationships over identities they barely understand. And the average person will become more emotionally dependent on group validation, more afraid of disagreement, and less capable of building a life from internal conviction. That future is not just political, it is psychological. It is a world where people cannot tolerate silence, ambiguity, complexity, or difference. A world where human beings become easier to mobilize and harder to ground. A world where loneliness grows even while everyone is always connected. The real danger is not just corruption, groupthink, political obsession, fake morality, online mobs, or religious performance. The deeper danger is what all of these things do to the human soul. They train people to portray themselves for belonging. They train people to substitute reaction for thought. They train people to call cruelty justice when the right crowd approves. They train people to fear individuality, distrust nuance, which you always supposed to leave room for nuance, and avoid self-examination. And I know people probably hear the word nuance used a lot. And the meaning of nuance is the fine distinction, a subtle difference in or shade of meaning expression, like the nuances of facial expression and body language. Like, as far as the weather feels good outside, but the nuance would be that, oh, that would be more of a caveat that if you in direct sunlight, you're gonna get burned up. Or the weather is beautiful today, but it can get windy sometimes. I don't know. I'll think of a better one in the future. And that is why so many people feel spiritually exhausted, emotionally confused, and socially trapped. Because deep down, many of them know they are living by borrowed scripts. They know the outrage is often fake. They know the loyalty is selective. They know the morality is inconsistent. They know the crowd they cling to will turn on them under the right conditions. They know the engagement they chase is not the same as love, and they know beneath all the noise, they have not fully met themselves. That is why stepping away feels so lonely at first. But sometimes loneliness is not a sign that you are lost. Sometimes it is the first sign that you're finally leaving the crowd long enough to hear your own mind. And for many people, that is where real adulthood begins. If you want, you can really always make changes in your life when you need to. And if you are an adult, unless a person has power over your livelihood, then it's something to be looked at a little bit in more detail. But if a person is not over your livelihood, it is no reason to still be dealing with these people, especially because if you worried about reputation, majority of the time you already have a bad reputation. These people already think and speak negatively of you to other people, or there's always situations people judging you for. The best thing you could do is be being judged while being happy versus being unhappy with the fear of being judged, even though you already being judged. It's like having a car note, regardless of whether or not you drive the car. You still have the car note. It's not like they looking at the mileage of it. But nevertheless, keep in mind, you seeing groupthink being weaponized all around you. They doing it with gambling because people feel better gambling with other people. You see everybody in these parlay groups and stuff like that. Not to mention, when it comes to those people who claim to get money on sports bet, some of those people are agents of the sports betting companies, and they're selling the ease of winning bets to get you hooked on gambling. So yes, there may be times where it's spot on, but then what that does is that gets you comfortable with giving away your money. And then when you start losing, you feel like you already in too deep. Word to Offset. And when it comes to any of these debt companies that you get into debt for, pay later stuff, they're weaponizing the fact that all of these different people want to be a part of stuff. That's why you can buy now, pay later, anything, because they know that a person of any income range is going to want to spend money on stuff to be a part of the group. And they see all of these groups. They see y'all on social media because y'all post y'all whole life. Like, but nevertheless, I probably do mass recording today. So, anyways.
Like, comment, and subscribe to J New Orleans.